Welcome back to New Persuasive Words. I am, as always and ever, Scott Jones.
I'm Bill Bohr. Scott, good to see you.
Good to see you, Bill. This is episode 400.
That is a lot of talking.
It seems like just yesteryear we were doing episode 300.
Well, it's been a while. I don't remember what year that was. Who did we have? Was it our 200th anniversary that we had a special guest?
We've had it to 200, 300. They're all special.
Special, but just you and I today.
Just you and I for our 400th episode. The country, the world needs us, Bill. Needs what goes on in public life without this conversation?
That's a good question.
Very little.
The listeners and I am open to be convinced.
Yeah, this is it, man. So, Bill, a lot is going on. Ukraine is sent a 666 drone attack on Russia. That's a lot of drones. Bibi Netanyahu is facing a serious electoral challenge.
Right.
From somebody that's hawkish, I guess, to the right of Bibi. I guess this would be former Israeli military chief Gadi Eisenkot. I think
former Queen Jezebel is mounting a comeback. He would be right if it would be more fat. Ahab, her husband, is totally endorsing this candidacy. Yeah.
This is wild, and the other thing, just to keep things seedy, scintillating, and domestic. I read an article today at MSN.com that Trump aide Natalie Harper's brother calls her relationship with the president unhealthy. This is Preston Harp, that's the brother. Is Preston Harp. Natalie Harp is the aide in question, and this relationship with Trump apparently has become so weird and strange and obsessive that the brother has spoken out, says that this relationship is a national embarrassment. I mean, this is just like the algae in the.
So, if you want to, are we going to make a list of the national embarrassments because a young aide obsessed with Trump does not make my top.
You don't think that's
20.
Really for you?
That does not make my top 20 worrisome relationships, right? Yeah.
So she is called apparently the human printer because I'm not kidding here, Bill.
It sounds like a line from a Paul Simon song.
She has earned the nickname the human printer because she constantly follows Trump around with a portable printer, supplying paper copies of emails, news articles, and other documents for him to read, rather than having the 80-year-old president look at them on a screen. According to Regime Change, a book I want to read, Regime Change Inside the Imperial Presidency of Donald Trump, a new book by New York Times reporters Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan, Harp would leave gushing letters for Trump in his personal spaces before joining the White House staff. One reportedly read, "You are all that matters to me." Oh, Bill, to get a note like that. That's lovely. So there you go. There's a lot going on, Bill, but
All right, well, we should, we'll probably mention this later because our topic seems to be swimming upstream in the world right now. We think, the death toll in Venezuela is mounting. It's tragic there. The Supreme Court decision yesterday has put the future of several 100,000 folks, including people who are working hard in my community, at risk. And up here, the immigration, they fired a guy who was really good, who was working with immigrants, and they want to get rid of the Haitians, and they're bringing in South African white people up here. So that should go really well.
What are the South Africans going to do?
Well, they're the farm. Remember, they are the new protected. They get immigration status.
Oh, so you're bringing in the
farmers who said they were victims of racism and violence in South Africa.
So they're coming to Vermont.
We have a handful of Afrikaners, I think, going to be resettled in Brattleboro. So,
wow.
Stay tuned for that one. Yeah. So,
well, I think the accents will give them away, right? I mean, that's.
Yeah, I think there's more than a few things.
Blend in.
No, and yeah, that's going to be interesting. But I have been practicing daily escapism with the World Cup, which I love. I love this event. I like watching it every 4 years. I watch the Euros as well when they're between the World Cups. So I have been enjoying this escapism. My oldest son was at the Ivory Coast game yesterday, which was kind of cool in Philadelphia. So that's fun for me. I enjoy that right now.
And a lot of Europeans are really finding things they love about America: ranch dressing, free refills, Cokes, air conditioning. Europeans are coming, or folks from over there are having a new impression of the United States from these things that the consumeristic, orgiastic food and other things you get here. People are loving it.
So I didn't hear about the ranch dressing. Oh my goodness!
People are going crazy. People
love ranch dressing.
They've not had ranch dressing, and they think it's amazing. Of course, it's
instead of having organic olive oil and balsamic vinegar and beautiful. Well, that's that's what's America contributing to the world right now. Ranch dressing.
Ranch dressing. Don't underestimate the power of ranch dressing. This is somebody. I heard somebody say that on a podcast that the World Cup is doing what the UN was supposed to do. It's bringing people together. There's remarkable camaraderie here, and people are
right. And in fact, it's it's Mexico and Canada. The three of us are co-hosting. Yes, I think it's been a neat thing, and how apparently local cities are embracing the national teams that are embedded with them. Heard the Scots have drank all the beer in Boston.
All the beer in Boston. Yeah, this is
beer in Boston.
People are thrilled. People are thrilled, Bill.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
So, Bill, you wanted to talk on our 400th episode. 400 episodes. I mean, and just that probably averages out to like 40 episodes a year or so. So, we're here for you. That's more than Bill Maher puts out a year.
Well,
and he's with HBO.
We started in the fall of 2015, correct?
Fall of 2015. I was listening to something today that was talking about podcasts, how they are the future of all broadcasting because they're so low in production cost and high in revenue. No, of course, that's us, low in production cost. So we're waiting for the high.
Yeah, the high revenue.
They're making the point that like you look at the Colbert show. Colbert goes and he's got this massive staff and he spends more than he brings into the network, right? And this person was saying, I think it was Scott Galloway, was saying that what he'll do is he'll go into YouTube, he'll do a podcast, he'll go into YouTube, he'll bring 5 people from his staff tops. And all of a sudden, it'll be the other. He'll make much more than he spends.
Well, like Conan, I think Conan's podcast is great. Mark Maron, recreated himself really through his podcast, which he's no longer doing. So no, I think and Dan Carlin who started long ago, does great content. He puts out things. We get things from him once a year or something. A year. But
Dan Carlin. When I started listening to Dan Carlin, was when I was listening, I think this was pre-iPhone. So this was back when I had like a 80 gig iPod and you had to sync. It was not connected to the internet and you had to sync it with your computer. Like I had all my podcasts downloaded through iTunes onto the laptop and then you had to sync it by cord. There was no wireless syncing in these days, by cord, and then download all your podcast.
All right. Well, before we jump into our topic, let's round off because this is our 400th podcast. So we've mentioned podcasts that we like and listen to. We've mentioned Dan Carlin. Mark Maron no longer is doing it. Conan O'Brien, if I need comic relief, I go with him. We both listen to Ezra Klein. And Russ Douthit. We both listen to those. I listen to In Our Times, BBC. It's like it's it's these. They usually get a host and three British scholars on.
In Our Times is great. Yeah, I listen to In Our Times sometimes.
So
the last one I listened to was what last In Our Times I listened to was I forget it was. I said some thinker. I think we were doing a podcast and I listened to something for background.
They do an excellent job. They bring in, it's really interesting. They bring in three scholars, and that's one thing England does not have a shortage of scholars, and so that's good.
Shortage of income right now. The average income in England is like that of like on par with Mississippi. I talked to somebody.
By the way, I did look Brexit. You and I were talking off record, and I read an article that Brexit is one of the reasons. What has happened to England's economy since they that's one of the factors, maybe not the only one. But what else what else are we recommending?
I listen to what else do I listen to? I listen to this funny podcast, the Hacks on Tap political podcast, which is with David Axelrod and Mike Murphy, and they always have a third guest. I find that usually pretty funny and interesting. I listen to the Slate Political Gabfest. That's pretty interesting as well. What else do I listen to? As we said, I listen to Douthit, and I listen to the Daily in the New York Times. I listen to, I don't know, I'd have to look and see what's in my queue. I listen to a lot of different stuff depending on what's up. I listen to Arnold Schwarzenegger's Pump Club on Mondays. It's excellent stuff I got to send you stuff on how much strength training you need to do at your age to benefit your aging. I listen to a lot of stuff.
I am doing strength training. I'm not sure I'm on the Schwarzenegger plan, but
Schwarzenegger's older than you, and
he is older than me.
He's older than you.
So I do weights 3 times a week. So that's what I'm try to do aerobics every day and weights 3 times a week. That's what I'm trying to do right now. So
aerobics what?
I do aerobics every day. Something aerobic. Like
something cardiovascular.
Cardiovascular. 18. Try to do at least 18 minutes, if not 30. So that's. But no one's asking me.
Eat your protein.
No one's asking me to do a podcast about that. But I'm trying.
I would love to do a podcast on
this.
You
know what? Speaking of hope, because I have another grandchild. Number 10 is coming this fall, and
wow.
I keep calculating if I want to at least see them all graduate from high school, and a couple of weeks ago, or about a month ago, I went and watched 3-4 lacrosse games and 2 baseball games, and was special. I went to a first grade lunch as special friends. So that that makes it'd be nice to be able to keep doing that. So as well as my wife, for whatever reason, wants me to stay around. So that's all good things.
Well, this is a good thing that she wants you to stay around. Oh, by the way, I listened to Pivot. I listened to Pivot, which I think is always astute with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway. It's very funny, and they're smart, always they're always into astute. One of the things they mentioned, though, by the way, that I thought was interesting, they were talking about all this big tech money that saddles up to the administration, and they were saying that, of course, capital and tech capital has always wanted to be close to power, but now it's different. It's not for influence. It's more like mafia protection money. Like you want to get in there so they don't extort you. So you build these relationships not so that you're necessarily influencing the halls of power, but it's like you're paying the mafia off, so that you get stuff confiscated. Well, so that's I found that interesting.
It's kind of like the Norman. Speaking of it's like the Norman land barons in the Welsh Marches, right? That's exactly what was going on there. They were basically little mafia dons.
By the way, but how much protein you're eating? How many grams do you think a day?
I don't count the grams of protein, but I eat protein. I eat protein probably twice a day.
You should be getting, if you want to age well, they're saying, I'm assuming you want to keep your mass at where it's at, about 1 gram per pound, which I find very difficult. That's a lot of protein.
It's a lot of protein. Well, it's Ezra Klein's interview with the guy who wrote a sad short love story recently. I forget the guy's name. He's a novelist. That this actually he would be a nice counterbalance to some of this obsession that's going on right now.
I talked to a woman the other day. This woman is not large. I mean, she's not, very fit. Teaches fitness classes and stuff. Svelte, a lot of muscle tone. She eats 40 grams of protein per meal, at least.
Huh.
And I have
Well,
another friend who's a woman who is one of the top. She's been on this Give and Take podcast to talk fitness and health. Her name's Lindsay Lombardi, one of the best wellness trainers in Philadelphia. She also says she shoots for 40 grams a meal. That's a lot of protein.
right.
I mean, that's like, it's tough to do without supplements. I mean, I think this is it, Bill. We're in a protein world. Everybody, it's much disputed if it's overblown. I read, I think, an article in the New Republic a couple months ago that was saying this is overblown. The people are saying too much protein.
I think they're probably right.
I don't know, but Bill, let's talk not protein.
Mm-hmm.
As we do our 400th episode, I could go on all day about protein.
I know you could.
Supplements. I love. Well, I love
right.
protein supplements. So, but let's talk a little about hope. You want to talk about hope, Bill? And we're in a culture that in some ways is in some circles and corners of it seems to be bereft of it.
Yeah.
But not you, Bill. Not us. Not here.
No. I think that's, it's interesting. I was reading, been reading this book by Rowan Williams, actually taking a group of folks through it, Passions of the Soul. And it's a book that's based on a retreat he led for Anglican Benedictines. And one of the things he was talking about is that, what he couples one of the 8 unhealthy thoughts of Evagrius with a beatitude. And the beatitude that he couples acedia with, or listlessness with, is blessed are those who mourn. And he talks about that mourning with other people is actually an act of hope, because it's identifying with the real pain that's in the world. And I think that's sometimes a optimism, or I think the various versions of narcissism that are expressed in so many ways in our culture, because it's not just about being healthy anymore. It's not only about being healthy. It's obsessing, which is the nature of human sinfulness, right? We can't stay balanced, right? But what was interesting is that, this lack of hope sometimes is connected with boredom, listlessness. Nothing's going to change. The world is mundane, or the world is falling apart. And, the unhealthy ways of dealing with that is to keep busy, create fantasies about how important you are, things I could be doing that can make everything better. And the corrective, according to Rowan Williams, is this idea of recognizing that there's pain in the world, recognizing your pain, but also recognizing that there is the rest of the pain, not ignoring what's going on in Venezuela, not ignoring the implications of what the Supreme Court gave the Trump administration yesterday for hundreds of thousands of Haitians. And if you haven't been following what's going on in Haiti right now, it might behoove you to just take a little minute to do that. But he says when we mourn and look at the hurt of the world, that also puts us in connection with the Christ who prays the Psalms, right? That's one of the things he quotes Augustine, that when we pray the Psalms, particularly laments, we're reminded that that's something that Christ does in us. And that actually the idea that God's in solidarity with human suffering is part of what the hope of the Christian faith is. We often talk about the resurrection and the coming triumph of God, but it's actually the hope starts with the idea of God being in solidarity with the suffering of the world, including our own suffering.
It's interesting. I was thinking about this when you said you wanted to talk about hope, and I thought, where do I see the cultural manifestations of hope? Where is the cultural longing for something to believe in? I thought very immediately. I thought, first off, it's the democratic socialists, right? There's these victories politically are I mean, there's a section of the country, of the culture, that thinks this is real hope, right? That the success of some sort of handpicked Mamdani candidates in New York is evidence of a kind of political realignment around people that are around issues of redistribution of wealth and equality. So I thought about that. There's certainly, and there's a correlate on the right? There's a right-wing populism.
Isn't that what the promise? That was the MAGA promise, right?
Right. Yeah. Making America great again.
My hope is in Donald Trump making America great again.
Yeah, and just look at the pool. Look at the reflecting pool, man. Just look at them. That's all I need. No, yeah, this is the right and left-wing populism. And the other thing I thought about, this just sounds so bizarre, but because I was listening to the Pivot podcast, and Scott Galloway was talking about GLP-1s and all of the applications of this drug, right? I mean, just Alzheimer's, addictions, this, that. I mean, it's just, he was talking about how most things that they discover about drugs are negative side effects. Okay, so chemo, we bombard you, and and it cures the cancer, but later it gives you leukemia or something. With GLP-1s, it's all these studies they're coming out with they're all upsides, right? They're all so. I mean, but the way he was talking about GLP-1s from a financial investment point, from a health point, I was like, this is secular hope, right?
Right. Oh yeah, yeah.
That will take these drugs and that will look fabulous, and and all these sort of predilections we have will be curbed, and you just take these, and then
or 40 grams of protein.
Or 40 grams of protein, which is, that's.
I mean, in other words, the guy who wants to not, who's the guy who's trying to defeat death or defeat aging?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's that. But there's a sense where one of the things, and again, if I'm going to refer to him 2 times, I should remember his name. But this idea that part of it is you can't enjoy life, right? You're not supposed. Part of it is, you can't. Food's not to be enjoyed. Exercise now is work. It's no longer recreation, right? Play has become work. So it is an interesting thing that I think there's a sense where when humans try to manufacture hope, it's because a little bit of both MAGA and the Democratic Socialist Party both remind me of what was going on in the 1920s after the collapse of the old world, right? And the devastation of World War I, but also all the empires that died and all these vacuums. And so there was really this fight in what is the new good? What's going to happen? How are we going to usher in the new world for humanity? And there was a lot of hope in the 1920s that the death of empire was going to be a rebirth of humanity. That didn't quite work out, but there are some parallels to that kind of people looking for, because if God wasn't dead, if Nietzsche didn't kill God, the battlefields of Verdun, Belgium and France killed God, right? We came out of World War I and with this devastation of the old order.
And one of the wars that I forget who I was. It might have been Dan Carlin or somebody. I remember listening to something about World War I and remarked it. Just the biggest technological change. You start off that war and people still look like 19th century soldiers, and the colors and the horses. And by the end of it, you got mustard gas, and it's just so technological. Warfare changed so much.
Right.
Yeah. By the way, we have a comment from Facebook. The great Steve Appel, who I know from Clubhouse, a wonderful guy who has one of the most consistent Clubhouse shows on the app, an app that's waning in popularity, but Steve still is going strong. He says Democratic Socialists equal yuck. So there we go. We've got one person.
Yeah. But I mean,
and I'm sure lots of people think that's not probably at least half the country. Probably.
But I think it's instructive to see that, there are true believers on both sides, but they're true believers. You see that in the MAGA thing. You saw a little bit of the Charlie Kirk movement, right? And I think there was a sense where there was an article recently, can that movement continue without him? Or was he just a unique character that somehow understood how to bring folks together?
We got the glowing widow.
Yeah, right.
I don't say the grieving widow. I say the glowing widow. I'll tell you what, all of us should live grief as vivaciously as she's living her best life.
Yeah. Well, no comment on that at any rate. I read this, finally finished this novel, Francis Spufford, who's become one of my favorite authors, and his latest novel is called None Such, and it's kind of an homage to Charles Williams. He writes he writes so vividly, and he's such a widely read and studied guy. So he recreates World War II England, and it was on the days, the months leading up to the declaration of war, and then through the Blitzkrieg. And he has his chief character is a woman who is just an interesting character. She's a liberated woman from 1940, trying to work her way up in the finance world. But she falls in love with a guy, and this is towards the end of the book, and they go to church on Christmas Eve, and this is during the Blitzkrieg. All right, and she has a tragedy in her life. So if she was part of faith, it doesn't seem that was ever part of her story. And so this is what the book says. So they're singing a line from "It Came Up on the Midnight Clear." They were singing the walls up. That was what they were doing. They were making a shelter with their voices by candlelight, in which vulnerable things, innocent things, new things could be at least hoped for. No guarantees. One bomb would smash the canopy of voices as it would smash the roof. But if the walls were only a solidification of hope anyway, and the mortared stones were no more strong than hope was no less strong than mortared stones. And thinking about this, and singing and holding Jeff's, her fiance's, hand, Iris felt her attention pass out through the walls of the church and into the world. This idea, well, I thought that even the mortar of a church cathedral, stones and the mortar, were built by hope, and that hope can have the same kind of strength and vulnerability as a cathedral in London during the Blitz. And I think, for me, that's a little bit what hope is. Hope is not a guarantee, right? Because hope is one of the three cardinal virtues, one of the three graces, right? Faith, hope, and love. And they're all gifts, and they're not guarantees because they're all based on faith, right? Faith, they all interact with each other. I mean, the fact that we believe that God is love is an article of faith. There's a lot of people that argue, that's nonsense. That doesn't make sense. When you say God is love, that sounds like some sort of ancient religious thing that no longer makes sense. But I do think having Christian hope is kind of like singing hymns in an old building with people you don't know during the collapse of the things around you, during dangerous times. And I think that, to me, is part of not letting the hate, not responding with the hatred out there and the bigotry that callously is putting thousands of lives at risk and have already killed people. To respond to that with an equal hate and bigotry, or to match their utopian dream of making America great with making America fair or equal, right? The more socialist vision. I mean, I appreciate people who want to try to make differences in the world, but part of my job as a pastor, or part of my walk as a Christian, is how do I not become like the things I oppose? And hope makes me look for something beyond myself. Hope, in some levels, is recognizing my powerlessness. It's recognizing my mortality and my limitations, and hoping for the good that God will do.
Yeah, I think one of the things that hope is often confused with optimism, which I
Right.
think I always think of optimism and pessimism as merely temperamental. I mean, I
Right.
think people are just naturally optimistic or pessimistic through nature or nurture, whatever. But I mean, dispositions are not like a sunny disposition is not necessarily hope. I mean, Cornel West, I heard him say one time, I'm not an optimist, but I'm shot full of hope. And that there's the capacity to hope despite your disposition, despite what you think the facts on the ground are. Love that phrase, the facts on the ground. Whatever. So I mean, I think that's there's this hope is a grace, a practice, could be something that you can celebrate, and despite the fact that that you don't feel it. By the way, Bill, we've got another comment, which I'm going to show in the stream now. Riverside's allowing us to show. But for those of you who are listening for the first time, if you're listening through the podcast app, we live stream this on Facebook, sometimes throw it up on YouTube. And so we have interlocutors sometimes that show, that kind of weigh in. Here's our friend Jane Rosenzweig, who says, "Is policy that reflects a belief in creating well-being for U.S. citizens socialists?" I don't know.
It doesn't have to be. I don't think it has to be. I mean, it could be. It's good. It's good Catholic social teaching, right? The common good.
Exactly.
It's what Puritanism espoused to be, right? That's what the Calvinist work ethic. Certainly not what capitalism has become, but the Commonwealth. No, it doesn't. There certainly can be other forms of it that are not socialist. But I think countries that have socialist approaches, it's kind of it is an interesting residue of Christendom, right? Particularly you think of European where that happens. This idea of the common good, it's kind of a secular version of what Christianity
Pure
was.
New England. Colin Woodard, Nations Apart. I have a friend who's reading that book right now, and
it's a great.
He would say, Colin Woodard. I'll tell you, the Puritans come off pretty well in that book. Pretty good, as Larry David would say. The Deep South, not so good.
Well, right. And again,
most honor killings, the most the gun deaths.
Well, and I also think too, you're right. There was a sense where there was at least the project up here began as that everyone theoretically had an equal opportunity. Where that doesn't mean there weren't slaves in New England as well, and Puritans had owned slaves, but it was of a different order than what it was in the South, right? And also to the violence that was the Revolutionary War was a civil war in the South, and part of between slavery and between plantations, but also the viciousness of the Revolutionary War in the South, part of what set the table for why we talk about Mississippi and Alabama the way they are now, right? Yeah.
I want to share, Bill, 2 quotes from Nietzsche on hope. One is from Human, Alter Human, which I actually reread this winter, which is worth rereading. So this is sort of Nietzsche, and this is almost, you almost hear Marx in this. Marx would probably pick this up. Hope in reality is the worst of all evils because it prolongs the torments of man. So that's again from Human, Alter Human. I think Nietzsche there is arguing, again, something Marx would pick up is that this is the sedative of the people, right? That somehow it diminishes agency and has people, rejecting the agency for mastering their own presence. And that's, and I think people will often critique certain kinds of hope as pietistic or pie in the sky and resulting in quietistic.
Or easily appropriated by power, right? To keep people
exactly.
Yeah.
And then, the Nietzsche is that, anybody with a decent sized corpus like Luther or anybody that has it, you can find all sorts of stuff. But this is from an earlier work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, where he says, "But by my love and hope, I beseech you, do not throw away the hero in your soul. Keep sacred your highest hope. Keep sacred your highest hope." So thinking there, I think that largely some forward moving vision, some sense that is not ought, right?
Yeah.
That the ought can be different than the is. That reality can look different in the world, in your soul, in your relationships, in social constructions. These sorts of things. This idea that it can be different is something that the human soul needs, right? That we need that to get out of bed in the morning. That things can actually be different than they are.
And I agree. I think that's, I'm not against human progress. I'm just suspicious of it.
There you go.
But I heard something yesterday. I listened to this little app, Pray As You Go, which is a little 10-minute prayer thing. It's put out by the British Jesuits, I think is where it comes from. But yesterday's reading was...
When you said that just sounds like the opposite of enthusiasm.
Right. British Jesuits. Exactly.
That sounds like the most understated gathering. Well, we'll join the British Jesuits for high tea.
That's right. There's not going to be too many jumping of a pew among that group, right? No rolling in the aisles there. But I was surprised at, the punchline of the closing prayer, because the reading was, the wise man built his house upon this, the rock, and the foolish man built his house upon the sand. Okay, and so I think the clear meaning of the parable is pretty straightforward. What you're supposed to do, right? Because it starts out by Jesus saying, "Not everyone calls me Lord is follower." But then this is the prayer. This was the most hopeful thing I've ever heard associated with that passage, and said, "So take a minute to pray and give God the times that you build on the rocks, and give God your foolish building as well."
Mm.
And that's hope,
which is so often
God, because if God is our ground, right? Because God is, then that God is loving is probably the better way to say that. Then he is not so concerned about our accomplishments as our being and seeking to be in him, which I find very hopeful.
And God is no more or less real, right, in the rock or the sand. Maybe sometimes more closer in the sand when we built and realized on the sand, right? I mean, that's
absolutely. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
No, that's beautiful. I mean,
that was a beautiful idea. It stuck with me very much so. So that's where I'm hopeful and praying for everybody who is searching for loved ones, everyone who's afraid of what tomorrow will bring, praying for them, and grieving a little bit with all of them as well.
Do not lose hope, my friends.
Amen.
Thank you.
Peace.